Namaste. Welcome to Mvskoke Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. Be ready to deal with coming fall and winter. So anyway, let's get on with it. We have a couple of things we'll be sharing here today. First of all, we're going to be speaking with the folks from our History and Cultural Preservation Department about the upcoming ceremonies and some of the work done by that group. We have the Council Oak ceremony coming up soon, so we'll give you a kind of a bit of a preview there on what's going on. And in the second portion of our program, our good buddy Jared Moore spoke with Jason Salzman, the tribe's National Press Secretary, on his Livewire program, and we'll be sharing parts of that discussion. But first of all, welcome to Raylyn and Robin Mvskoke, Raylyn Butler and Robin Mvskoke. We appreciate you all making time and coming in to chat about a very important cultural occurrence here for the Mvskoke people. First of all, thank you again for coming in. Now, Raylyn, we have the very important Council Oak Tree ceremony coming up in early November, so let's start there and give us an idea.
Sure. Raylyn Butler, Jaho Jifkidos, Almalegida, Wakogi, Almadowa, Pecan Tallahassee. Great to be here. I serve as the manager of the Historic and Cultural Preservation Department, and we have been planning the upcoming Council Oak Tree Ceremony, which will be on November 5th at 2 p.m. at the Creek Nation Council Oak Park in Tulsa, located at 17th and Cheyenne. And we haven't had the event since 2018, so it's been quite a while. You know, part of that was due to COVID, but also part of that was due to we got rained out in 2019. Oh, yeah. So yeah. We're looking forward to bringing this event back. In those couple of years that you missed, did you miss it? I mean, was it something that you all felt was an important part of our culture that wasn't being practiced? You know, the Council Oak started in 2002 through legislation of the National Council wanting to recognize the founding of the city of Tulsa, but also wanting to honor our ceremonial grounds and our traditional way of life and those who continue to carry on our traditions at the grounds. And so it's something that everybody looks forward to. It's an event that also helps support the grounds by giving them an honorarium for attending the event. So it's something I know that has always been helpful for them to have a little bit of extra funds to help go towards fundraising or help have an extra dinner or help a member at the ground that's in need. So, but I do think that it definitely is an important event that it was postponed due to COVID because of just, hard to get people to gather or bringing, leadership like that together. We didn't want anyone to get sick or really wanted to, it was hard to do a virtual event also for this and just decided to postpone. So, yeah, I do see that a lot of people are eager and anxious to have the ceremony again.
Now, Robin Mvskoke, your title is Cultural Advisor for this department. Now, in this ceremony, what are the important things that you want to bring and you want to see observed and happen during the ceremony?
Well, the history of that Lojaboga, then they have a speaker on the importance of the ceremonial grounds, and speaker they're going to get now is he's a great speaker and he's got a lot of knowledge of the importance of the ceremonial grounds, which young people today they don't have much knowledge about it. That they all think it's all about the dance, which there's other aspects that's real important.
Well, as Raylene mentioned, this site is pretty much the founding of the city of Tulsa, and I think that's important for people to understand. As you say, it's not just a dance or speeches and this kind of thing. For you, how important is it that you remind, I guess, the city of Tulsa that it wasn't for us, they wouldn't have a city of Tulsa? I mean,
yeah, that part, stuff like that, I leave to Raylene. She knows, she got a lot more knowledge. I'm just kind of trying to help out the best I can.
Well, and
the history of it.
Yeah, I mean, that history and cultural advice, what are the important things that you want to make sure happen that are mentioned or don't get done, things that you shouldn't do, to make sure the culture is there and people understand that. What's important for you there? Well,
like I said, the speaker going to speak on behalf of the importance of the ceremonial ground.
Mm-hmm.
He's got not a lot of knowledge, so I respect what he's got to say, and I believe he knows what proper way to say stuff like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. In your position there, do you find yourself pretty busy sharing this knowledge, or do you see a lot of people who are involved know much of it already? I mean, is it the job easier? Is it difficult?
Well, I just kind of started it, so I haven't really had haven't had too many people question me, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I guess. Depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
But I'm willing. Somebody come and talk to me. I can share some input.
And some of it you shouldn't, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, Raylene, as the ceremony has gone, I've been to a few of them. They're a very solemn occasion, and you try to reinforce that among people who attended, so it's not something for the kids to run around and play or make noise and things like that. You have to sit and understand, listen to the prayers and the words of wisdom that are being shared. And in the time that you've put it on, is that important to growing? I mean, is your audience starting to get bigger, or people more perhaps knowledgeable about what you're doing?
I think that the event is really the way I'll share a little bit about our agenda.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Our Master of Ceremonies is going to be Council Representative Mr. Galen Cloud, and we hope to incorporate more Mvskoke language into the speakers and to the event. And we're also going to have the Honor Guard come and post the colors, and then we'll have a welcome from Chief Hill and Second Chief Beaver. And then we would like to recognize our veterans and then recognize the ceremonial grounds. One other thing we want to add this year is doing a moment of silence to honor those who have passed during since the last event in 2018. Looking at some of our contacts at the grounds, it's really sad to see that almost 7 Mikos have passed out of the 16 grounds since 2018, and part of that due to COVID, and it's just we've lost so many cultural bearers and fluent speakers and people who were the ones who helped carry on these traditions and teach the new generation, the next generation, and so we really wanted to try to find a way to honor those who have went on and pay respect to them. These are big losses for the grounds, for our community, for our tribe, and they're not easily replaced. We're talking about people who've had lifetime appointments to be these Mikos, and so it's like you said, very somber, but we want to try to make an effort to honor those ones who did go on. And we're also working on getting a proclamation from Chief Hill to recognize the event, as a Council Oak Tree Day, and to, just have something more official from the tribal government recognizing and honoring this event. And we also want to give an opportunity for each ground to get up and say something if they would like,
good.
so that they can feel free to come up and talk. And so that's kind of the program in a nutshell. But then we are going to have a traditional dinner afterwards at 4 p.m. Ojiabova, Hickory Ground, Hambadahayas are going to be cooking a traditional meal, and we're going to serve at 4 o'clock at the Tulsa Creek Indian Community over there by Tulsa Hills. And I can share the menu with you if you'd like to hear all the good food we're going to have.
Sure, I love hearing about good food.
We're going to have grape dumplings, sofki, sopko-nipki, meat and hominy, red beans, chicken dumplings, fried pumpkin, fried chicken, salt pork or fried meat, sauerkraut and wieners, fried bread, and tea, water, coffee, pop, and maybe even some Mvskoke.
Oh boy, yes, I'm getting hungry already. The Tulsa Creek community is making its space available for your folks to come in and conduct your meal.
Yes, we're very thankful for them for allowing us to use the center there. And also, if it is raining that day, we'll have the event at the Tulsa Creek Indian Community.
Okay. Now, we mentioned Tulsa here a few times, and I remember in past ceremonies, a mayor or a city official would show up and they would give their speech or proclamation and acknowledge, I think regretfully, that it was us that started Tulsa, that without the Mvskoke people there and meeting at the tree, they would have no city of Tulsa. Now, their presence has been kind of, I don't want to say downgraded, but reduced somewhat, and the focus is not necessarily on Tulsa and his proclamation, but recognizing the grounds and the people and the tree and the event itself. Now, this has to be a sort of a conscious decision. Now, what was the thinking behind making this change?
Well, we really wanted, this is the first time the Historic and Cultural Preservation has took the reins of organizing this event. We, in partnership with the Tourism Department, worked on the 2018 ceremony and or the 2019 one that got rained out. And that was a transition year where tourism kind of said, is this an event that cultural preservation would be willing to take on and do the planning and handle the budget? And we said yes. And at the time, Mr. David Proctor, who was Miko at Tallahassee, Wagogai, and who passed from COVID in 2020 or 2021, he was a big part of this ceremony and planning it and putting together the agenda and all the volunteers and cooks and putting a social dance and stickball game together for this event. And, it has been difficult to kind of pick up the pieces and find out, well, what do we do now that he's not here? And, and for us too, really looking at what was the intent and purpose of Council Oak and trying to be as respectful as possible to carry on this event. And so, we kind of ran out of time this year and only really had a month and a half to plan. But what we'd like to do is to, in this off season, meet with the ceremonial grounds and see what it is they want to see in this event, and really have community input on what this event should look like moving forward. So we just wanted to kind of, now that we're in a transition, take a pause and be as respectful and ask those who this event is for how it can be improved, what would they like to see. And so what we've decided is that this really is more of a tribal event in terms of importance to our tribal government, to our citizens, and to educating the public. It is open to the public, and we do want people to recognize how the Mvskoke people, specifically the Lojaboga, put their sacred fire here at the council oak tree and began the first gathering place in Tulsa, and really was the reason why there was hundreds of people living here, and why there was people gathering for governance, for commerce, for trade, to play ball games, to handle disputes, and how it really became the first city hall in this area. And enough so that even after Lojaboga left and went down south, the people stayed and continued and, you know, grew into what is today the second largest city in the state. And even the name Tulsa coming from Muskogean language of shortened from Tallahassee, meaning old town, but they used to call it Tulsi Town, and then just dropped the Tulsi to Tulsa, you know. And so, you know, the city of Tulsa has approved us to have the event and let us use the park through a special permit. But that's kind of the extent of their participation this year.
Now, going through the Tulsa public school system, I do not ever remember any of that history being shared. It was not part of the curriculum there. So I'm glad to see those kinds of things changing and this educational effort going forward. Now, Robin, let me ask you kind of perhaps a bit of a personal thought there. What does this tree mean to you? I mean, its importance in still being there, and as a symbol, what does it mean to you? Well,
We talked about it earlier. Back in the 70s, the utility PSO, I believe they was one that cut it down, but a man from Nuyaga, his name was Eunice Hill. He was on a crew that was sent to cut that tree down. But he remembered the significance of the tree, what it was, what it stood for, and he told the people at our tree company, and they got with the utility and the Tulsa, and that's how that tree was saved. Mm-hmm. And I looked at it, stopped by there last week, and tree that old, but it's got life. It don't really have no dead limbs or anything on it. And you stand there, you look at it, you could you get some memories of what happened or what was there and how it all became.
How we almost lost it.
Yeah.
Now, in standing underneath that tree, I personally have always got a sense of pride. And I don't know, pride's the best word I can use there, and seeing that, you know, this was so much a part of our history and it's still here. And Tulsa, doggone it, don't you dare try to cut it down. And now I understand this tree has kind of got an unusual life of its own. It has lightning rods inserted into the trunk because it has been struck by lightning, and those rods keep it from being destroyed and things like that. That respect, I think, has perhaps declined somewhat from the city because of whatever budget things or priorities they've gotten, and it's up to us to remind them of their beginnings and our presence here. And what do you see, or what would you feel that you would want to see happening with this tree? I mean, does it keep it as it is now? Does it need to be, the park need to be improved or anything else like that? You got any ideas there?
Yes, and I just wanted to say too, when you see that tree, it's amazing, it's beautiful,
isn't it?
And you don't really see as many trees like that in that neighborhood. unfortunately probably didn't last, but I would say it's one of the oldest trees there, closest to Arkansas River in that area. And with all the development, it's hard to see, but you can imagine looking over the Arkansas River there and how awesome that spot was, because it is on a hill, and it would have been looking over the Arkansas River and everything. But when visiting the park recently, we did notice that there are some just kind of wear and tear from the elements of, not with the tree. The tree looks good. The fence really does help keep it protected, but the sculpture that's there and the little plaza that has historic markers and plaques, there is some damage to that, and some of the tiling has come off, and a light fixture is missing, and you could tell people skateboard on those signs, or there's just some wear and tear from use. And then even just the sign itself at the park is getting old and a little withered. So I think it would be great to work with the city who owns the park to see how Creek Nation can help improve or help maintain, or really try to get some improvements made there with new signage and things like that.
Now, I mentioned, of course, my personal feelings when I was near that, underneath the limbs in the shade of that tree. Let me ask you that same question, Raylene. What feeling do you get when you see that tree?
I also feel very proud and strong, in that, for some people, they can't think of years, 100 years ago or 500 years ago, but, for me, I can see it as a strength of, we still carry this on. This didn't die. This isn't gone. These things that people talk about or maybe have a hard time imagining, we see it at the grounds today, and it's still alive. We're still going, and that's where I get the sense of pride and feeling, strong, because, even though we talk about how many people we've lost, we still have people working hard to continue and carry on this way of life, and it isn't easy. And so I feel very proud of these ceremonial grounds for continuing something that isn't easy and something that our ancestors have carried on for thousands of years. So there's a lot of pride and strength in knowing that our ancestors fought for us to have these things today, and that we get to carry them on, a sense of responsibility also.
Right, yeah. I was going to say, you've got that burden, if you will, to carry and to keep as part of our lives. The thing that I've been impressed with the last couple of years is when the ceremony started, there was a young boy who did a call, and pulled people together, and it was just a young kid, and he just belted it out. I mean, he was so good at it, and I was thinking, yeah, there's our future right there. Do you see a lot of that interest coming now from our young people? Are there a lot more paying attention or becoming involved?
The call, if like descendants from that ground, if somebody was able to do it, there might be something, add a little extra special to that ceremony. And a lot of times that call, it's for the ancestors. To me, they could hear that, and somehow I always believe that during that time you could sense some kind of a sign. If you, there might be some little thing, but there's always some kind of sign that goes along with it.
Well, just that guy doing this, I mean, he just reared back and let it fly, so to speak. And I was thinking, my gosh, yes, yeah, there's our future right there. Well, listen, in the last couple of minutes here, we've got, let's recount the logistics, if you will. Day, date, time. Do people need to bring anything or not bring anything?
The event will be on Saturday, November 5th at 2 p.m. At the Council Oak Park. We're going to have chairs available, about 100 chairs. You might bring your own chair if you want. Would be okay. And the parking might be hard around there. And recently we saw that there's paid parking, or you have to pay $1 to park in the lot that's nearest to the park.
Oh,
but
gosh.
but we're working to try to pay that lot so that it would be free for everybody. So there might be, a little trouble parking, but no, you don't have to bring anything. Open, free to the public, and we welcome everybody to come and attend, and hope that you get to learn something and hear some great speakers, and actually, get to participate in recognizing and honoring the ceremonial grounds.
Okay, now if somebody had a question or wanted more information, how did they get in touch with you?
You can call us at our department phone number at 918-732-7733.
Okay, well, Raylyn, Robin, thank you so much for coming in and filling us in. We hope that you get quite a crowd. One more thing?
Yeah. Tokaga ha fula chokolako te wadagi. Obanagana man obanaho ilido man di mabahezi yasnoan manitagi nak pohag noad kitagi wedi lo koin. Hayo ad magayazi idawada over that nak okilki jaga jadi bonaga man bonaho ilo mada hayo ad ponagada bosongi ba over there saboga state ke bonaga longo rio boha yo longa bosongi ladi kuwagi longa marongo sige maro sige jagas.
This is an oral tradition, and we're glad to be able to share it on our program. Once again, thank you all for coming in. We appreciate it, and we hope we get a wonderful turnout for this event.
Mado.
Go. All right, stay with us here on Mvskoke Radio. We're going to take a short pause here, and we'll be back and we'll listen to our Tribal Press Secretary talk about what he does for a living and representing our people.
Okay, welcome back to another edition of Livewire. On the program today is Jason Salzman. He is the director of MCN Communications. Is that the right title?
Press Secretary.
We're having him on.
Yeah.
It's both? Okay.
It's both, yeah. Yeah.
So, Director of Communications and Press Secretary Jason Salzman. We're having him on the program today. So, if you guys out there haven't ever heard of it or seen it, there's a link in the description to this stream to the Mvskoke Pod. It's a podcast that Jason has been doing over at the executive branch. The first season was mostly, what would you say, like celebrity profiles, or interviews with celebrities. You guys had Sterling Harjo, you had Yadika Starfield, you had, forgive me, you guys also had the spirit guide from the program, what was that?
Oh, yeah, Dallas Go-To. Yeah.
So you guys have had some interesting talent on there.
Yeah.
And then your second season now is you're doing a
Storyteller series.
Yes, and the first 3-part episode is about the 1979 Constitution. Yeah. So I guess my first question for you would be, how did the pod come about? What was the idea for that?
Well, we were just kind of discussing one day how we could do something that would be both informational and entertaining, fun and kind of invigorate people to want to get the information that you want out there and the conversations that you want out there, but doing it in a way where it's not packaged just sort of, here's some dry, flyer information, whatever. And so we said, hey, let's just start having conversations from our reservation. And I had, of course, experience hosting and interviewing people from my days at Native News Today and the television program. you know, it was a natural fit. I always wanted to do a podcast. There's a podcast craze. A lot of people now, that's the way they gather their information. That's the way that they gather their content. And whether you're mowing the grass or, you know, writing a paper or whatever, people have their earphones in and they're usually listening to a podcast. And so I thought, you know, let's take that and let's take, you know, a need for us to communicate, but also just a basic need for the same things we started the TV show for, you know, getting Native people and Native subject matter out there conversationally into a pop culture world, if you will, and where people are, you know, like I said, conversations from our reservation. The reason for that was, hey, you and I, all of us, you know, for so many years around here, we've had conversations with people, and I bet you would agree with me. There's so many times where we're like, man, whether we were, you know, on a park bench or out at an event and nothing's being recorded, we're like, man, I wish we could have recorded that conversation.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And a lot of people probably would have been a party to that.
Yeah.
Had
And
they
there's
known.
information that I got that's probably nobody else has,
Well,
or very few people, and everybody, all citizens need to know it. Right.
Yeah. And the perspectives from some of those people. Like I said, there's probably a lot of Native people out there, not even in the state of Oklahoma, but in this country that know who Sterling Harjo is, but they've never sat down and talked to him.
Right.
You know, they could tell you, they could see his picture and be like, that's Sterling Harjo.
Mm-hmm.
He's the But then you go, well, what's he really like when you just sit down and talk with him about things? And we talked about, you know, him growing up in Holdenville and some of his earlier movies and the reason he does what he does. And, and you know what I mean? Like the things that you could only really get from having a conversation with the man. And same thing with Dallas Goldtooth. A lot of people go, oh, that's the spirit guy on the horse that says, oh, but he's also like a really hardcore environmentalist and has been in that fight for many years and with a national reputation and a national organization. So, you know, you find out, peel back a lot of layers on these people. And I think that was the motivation to begin with. And so we just started setting up guests. And like I said, we had a Major League Baseball player. We had an NBA basketball player, Dallas Goldtooth, Sterling Harjo. We had some really good guests. We also sprinkled in some people that we wanted the folks around here to know about, our chiefs, our speaker of our national council, some of the people, our tribal liaison, you know, like what's her background? Why does she want to work and connect with citizens outside the reservation?
The AG.
Yeah, the AG. And you're going, my God, our AG is a woman that was a former Marine that, you know, has this really, you know, upbringing that sort of carved her into the kind of person she is now. And then she shares perspectives and stories that make you go, man, I'm glad she's in that position. I'm glad she has that kind of heart to be like, maybe we do things, maybe we do justice a little bit differently at the Mvskoke Creek Nation. Maybe it's not, you know, crumple up, throw in the wastebasket, close the book, we're done. Maybe it's more of a restorative and a rehabilitation type of crime and punishment scenario. And we've been saying that with McGirt too. Like that's why we fight so hard for McGirt. We see your system of things and how it doesn't work. You know, we in Oklahoma incarcerate more women than anyone in the world. We see how it doesn't work. That's not the model we want to follow. We want to carve our own path. So people go, oh, why do you fight for McGirt? Those are some of the small things that people don't talk about. And when we have somebody on like A.G. Wisner that says, hey, this is where I come from, this is what's shaped my mentality, you know, there might be people out there listening to that interview that go, man, I'm super glad she's our AG. Or at the least, man, I'm glad I know a little bit more about what our AG is all about.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing for any information because, you know, in the past there's been not a lot of information to get out on that front. But and I want to remind the audience too, if you guys have a question about the Mvskoke pod, pop it into the chat. And or if you like have suggestions for a future podcast that Jason might look into, pop them in there. T.Y. Pearl did post some questions in there, and we might go through those later if Jason wants to touch on them. But we're not doing this isn't really like a press conference thing. We're just talking about the podcast. And
I'm glad you said that about people suggesting who they wanted to hear. because that's really like, for me, I want to make it good, of course, but like at the same time, I want to make it popular. I want the people to be waiting for who's the next guest. You know what I mean?
Right,
And I know
yeah.
we've got some of those podheads out there that are like, oh man, they holler at us and they're like, we can't wait till you upload your next episode.
Right.
We know they're with us. You know what I mean?
In fact, we got Dr. Kirsten C. Kunkel is making her comment here saying, very cool live wire to talk about the Mvskoke pod. Always enjoy listening to Spotify, Jason.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, and that's,
And while, since she's in the chat too, I can get you the contact information, because she would be a great person to
She'd
do
be a
the
great
pod
one,
with.
yeah.
She is a opera soprano, and
Wow.
also has written musical pieces and operas. She
Oh,
has written
man.
musical pieces based on Alexander Poesy poetry,
Yeah.
and she is a descendant from him. So
be perfect.
yeah, for sure. I'll get you that contact.
That's
info,
a story
so
to tell right there. And I saw where Jonadev Chowdhury was mentioned on the chat too about
Yes.
being a guest. And see, and that's another thing, people they hear, we have an ambassador. What's he really do? Like what's going on in DC? Like why was that position created? I was like, these are perfect things to talk about, because like I said,
And you guys interviewed John
absolutely
Dev.
did.
So TY Prol, if you didn't know that,
And
they've already.
please, if you're just now like acclimating yourself to the podcast, this is a great time, guys, because our first season we had 17 episodes. There is a ton of content already there.
Yeah.
If you haven't explored,
Binge watch
so
it.
many different
Or binge
stuff.
listen to it.
Binge listen, and I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the Jonadev podcast. But
I haven't done. This is just my disclaimer. I haven't done any of the celebrity stuff. Like
Yeah.
when I saw that you guys announced the 1979 thing and
You were
the
like,
people that
okay.
were going to be. Well, that's my jam. I was like, oh, I want to hear
Yeah,
what
man.
these guys have
Yeah.
to say in particular about this.
Absolutely.
And you guys really got into the weeds, which is also what
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah, sure,
So
sure.
like Sterling Harjo, I know that's what most people, like the celebrity stuff is good.
yeah.
But it's just not my thing.
Well, yeah, and what I was going to say is that in that episode we also included Jonadev's wife, who is like herself maybe more known in Indian country than Jonadev.
Right.
Mary Catherine Nagel is a famous playwright, has had plays done and performed all over the world, but also is like a really, I don't know if we can say BA, but a BA lawyer.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Awesome. In the legal field, and an incredible, staunch, warrior for sovereignty and women. And she works with NIWRC, the National Indian Women's Resource Center. So all these eclectic people sort of came together to make that first series. But I'll tell you what, the way we'll segue into season 2 is I felt like this is cool, right? Like, let's knock this out and let's keep this going, because we had that formula where it was very guest driven.
Right.
Who's this person? I want to know. I started feeling like whenever we took our break and said, let's make a season 2, because we were at that point where I was just like, we got 17 episodes. Let's take a break for a minute. Let's repurpose, if you will, and let's look at what
Reassess.
season 2 would be. Yes. And so when I started thinking about season 2, I was like, let's make the subject matter the celebrity. Right? Like the stuff we've always heard about, Jared, that nobody's ever really talked about. So I started thinking, I was just like, the 79 Constitution. Extremely polarizing, no matter who you ask.
Yeah.
There's controversy around it. There's chatter around it. And I said to myself, let's talk to people that were there, that were involved in the framing of it. And I just so happened to be incredibly lucky to get in the gentleman that basically framed the Constitution. I mean, literally, Ed Mouse was a graduate student at OU studying policy. And, Claude Cox, the chief at the time, has in his hands the responsibility of creating a modern government for the tribe out of nothing. And he goes, hey, who's this young grad student studying in policy? Let's see him. And he cares about the nation.
Right.
He knows its people. He has a vested interest in doing this. And it was Ed Mouse. And at that time, he wouldn't be a principal chief yet. But Bill Fife was like, if we had it at the time. See, this will tell you how, you know,
It's a great program.
Not even, yeah. This will tell you, you've got to listen to this. But this will tell you, like, for the people that are like our age, maybe a little bit younger, in their early 30s, it may be hard to conceive that there wasn't all of this in this government at the time.
Right.
But for people like Ed and Principal Chief 5, those guys remember when it was absolutely nothing. And so at that time, Bill 5, who would later go on to become Principal Chief, of course, but at that time, he was just like the manager of what would become the Education and Training Division that we know now. Right. But it had to sprout up from, you know, nothing.
Yeah.
And that's what
and
Ed
no
was
spoilers
saying.
to the
No
audience,
spoilers,
but and I also
we
want
go
to say,
into it, yeah.
well, I want to compliment you guys. The production on it is impeccable. This music stuff is great. All of the editing.
Did you like
is
the
awesome.
Smashing Pumpkins?
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice. And the other thing too is it's a really good series of interviews. From our standard, one of the things we used to talk about it with any story is, can you get the eye juice? You know, can you get the emotional impact on the person? Yeah. That's in this story. You wouldn't think that you're doing an interview about policy decisions and how the government's going to be structured would have an emotional component for people, but it does. It does when you're in it and you're like fighting for different standpoints and things within the Constitution. So
I'll give a really small spoiler if you don't mind.
Oh no, go for it.
Spoiler,
it's your pod.
There was one moment in the episode that really, and you can, if you listen, you can tell it broke me up. I was laughing at the top of my lungs, but I really am crafting this question. You know how I can get in the weeds when I'm doing a question.
Right.
I'm really crafting this question, and I'm setting it up, and I'm layering it. I'm getting him ready to answer the way that I can't wait till he answers this. And I'm talking about how meaningful it must have been, and how excited he was, and how fired up, you know, to do this and have this responsibility. And I lay it out there and I say it, and Mr. Mouse goes, well, I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I just died laughing because I wasn't.
I know the exact part you're talking about, because I listened to it and then I told somebody else about it. I was like, this is the most like Mvskoke situation where Jason's like, you must have been so excited to come in and work on this government or whatever. And
no, it was a pain.
Mr. Mouse is like, no, not really.
It really sucked.
Like they told me I had to come down there and do it. I was the only one that could do it. And I was like, that is a Indian dude answer 100%.
Well, but when we continue to talk about it, you understand sort of what he means by what he's saying, because and we get into it in episodes 2 and 3, really into the meat of it. But you know, nobody really realizes that he wasn't a popular man because of that 79 Constitution.
Right. There were legal battles over
There were people that wanted things to remain the way that they were. And we even see that now. And that's what we talk about in the podcast, about as much as things change, these squabbles about how do we really do things here at this Mvskoke Nation. If you poll 10 citizens, you may get 10 different answers on 10 different topics.
Yeah,
and
for
so
sure.
that makes it hard for leadership. It makes it a tough job. When they say being chief or being a council member or being an executive director that's tasked with these kind of things, it's not, they're not saying it's a tough job for you to feel sorry for them or to let them off the hook when things don't go good, when you don't agree with things or whatever. It's a tough job because you're having to satisfy so many different voices and opinions.
Right.
And it's impossible to do, right? No matter what you do. So that's what makes it a tough job. And so I could feel that coming through Ed. He was like, man, and then that's when we kind of segued into the cool stuff about, you know, we had people chasing guys around tables and getting into literal physical, you know, disagreements about this. But what I thought was interesting was, you know, you start to kind of chip away at what was the problem and everything like that. And I said it just a moment ago. You had a certain set of folks that said there ain't nothing wrong with the Constitution.
1866
Yeah, the 1866.
Yes.
There ain't nothing wrong with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it or whatever. But you had, now remember, this is 1979. You had women starting to elevate themselves into positions of influence at the nation and be a part of those things. And they were certainly a part of that group, the Indian Action Team. That'll be on the test, folks.
Well,
now,
without them, the whole thing would have fallen apart.
Right. And they're on this very important part of Creek history, right? They're crafting what we are to become and be. And these women are looking around going, when people are saying, well, we just need it the way it was and blah, blah, blah. These women are sitting around going, hey, we couldn't even vote whenever you're, according to this current Constitution, we can't even vote. So, yeah, and that's what Ed was explaining. He was like, listen, I certainly had my feelings about don't change things whenever, certain things culturally and traditionally and whatever. And and there was certainly that pull when they were putting these things together going, are we selling our souls to the white man? Are we mimicking a form of government when we have our own, traditional? I get it.
Well, even today, there are different groups in the old timers. I say old timers really, but the elders that still are arguing for the 1866 Constitution, the bicameral legislature, and they're like, we should still do it that way. So, but it is good, and you guys should check it out. Not to spoil everything that's in it, but it is really interesting to hear it out of the horse's mouth. We had a comment in here. T.Y. Prohl saying Robert Trepp would have been a good person to have.
We would love to have Robert Trepp on.
And I would say to T.Y. Prohl, if you haven't checked it out, there is a very interesting interview with Robert Trepp in our From the Vault series.
Yeah, there is.
We have A More Perfect Union, and it's Robert Trepp talking about the process at the time of the process. So you could go check that out. We can't, God rest his soul.
God rest his soul,
Trepp could not be on any program.
When he was still with us, I'm glad he brought his name up, because when we were throwing kind of guests around for this episode, I remember thinking, man, I wish Bob Trepp was still alive.
Yeah.
And some of those people, like in that era, but then we sort of kind of whittled away and kind of landed on Ed, which was perfect. Ed had just become a living legend. And a part of it too, Jared, was like making sure that so now this story, Ed telling this story firsthand point of view is locked and loaded. We got it forever.
Oh yeah, that's
people 100 years from now can listen to him.
Yeah, that's the thing that's important about these interviews too, is getting that stuff on the record.
Yes,
it's not so much about the person is right or wrong in what they're saying, but that there wasn't a lot of perspectives being recorded at the time period that happened, because people were so busy making it happen.
Yeah,
they weren't like recording the history of it, so it's good to get it on record.
Well, and the fact that we were bringing up talking about Robert, I love it, but Robert guided the fact that he's no longer here guided my insistence, my persistence in getting these gentlemen sit down. Let's get this recorded. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
And put some urgency on it. And I think this is going to hold up well. And I just really, like I said, we got 3 parts out of it. And we're putting it together. And when I do a show, on most of the times I'm sort of regimented. When I'm looking over, I'm about 42 minutes. Let's not lose anybody. Let's start to wrap it up. These guys, it was open up the mic and let's just go until we're done. And so we got 3 parts out of it, which I'm very thankful for, because each part in this episode sort of breaks down different parts of the issue, right? So there was like the lead up and why do we need to do this? Then there was the actual process, the voting, the meetings, all of that, the politics, what have you. And then the third I thought was very important. The third part was to talk to them about what would you do what would you have done differently?
Yeah.
Do you look at this thing and go, man, we messed it up? Or do you look at it and go, well, it really held up well. I'm proud of this and everything like that. And the answer was fascinating.
Yeah,
it was a little bit of both.
That's what I was going to say. That part of the third episode there, where they're talking about, for instance, term limits and things, and the reversals of their own philosophies on things, was to me really interesting from a political standpoint, from what they were dealing with, and then going forward. And we could have a long conversation.
Well, we've talked about that before.
Yes,
term
absolutely.
limiting and
term limits is coming back as a topic, just generally. Like you know, like there's so many times in the podcast where you're like, what we're talking about now has come back as an issue now, right? So it's really interesting, and you wouldn't think it would be timely,
right? But
they are timely.
No, it is, because everything sort of repeats itself. That's the old cliche saying, right? But I mean, it does, and I think the more things change, the more they stay the same in certain instances. So it's all full circle. It really is.
For sure. Well, so we've talked about that. What's next on the pod? So
we've got a really exciting pod coming up for our next installment. It's going to be Tulsi time. It's going to be how a creek town turned into an oil town. And we're going to be talking with Russell Cobb. He's the associate professor of the arts at the University of Alberta. But he's a lifelong Tulsan, and he's got an incredible story to tell. I don't want to spoil again, but this guy is growing up in Tulsa. Some things are happening where his mom is having to be moved out of her house. He says, well, I want to see the abstract, and that's when things start getting good.
Right.
Okay? And he falls into a rabbit hole of intertwined Creek and Tulsa history about what the land is that he grew up on and knew, and the surrounding areas, what it actually was, how it came to be, how it got taken, and how we are now in this second largest city in Oklahoma that very rarely has any sort of nod to its Mvskoke roots.
Right.
And so when the very root of the city is Mvskoke, a tree, ironically, the council oak tree. And so we touch on a little bit of everything. The Lutchaboga saying, this is our place, and this is where we're going to be, turn into Tulasi, Old Town, and then to Tulsi Town, and now Tulsa. And we talk, Jared, in the pod about the little things that have sort of improved. We're seeing naming and, land acknowledgments. I know some people hear the land acknowledgments, they roll their eyes. Oh, thanks for the land acknowledgement.
I'm doing it right now.
But I saw you.
You guys can't see me.
No, but I it's better than nothing. And I think that when we see, signage and language in different places where we never would have seen it before, take, for instance, and we tell this story too, a lot of people would go shrug off the Tulsi on the Tulsa Drillers baseball team jersey.
Right.
Okay, and you go, what's that? Whatever. But I think about that person that's in the stadium that night and sees that and doesn't know what it is and asks somebody, and then somebody goes, oh, well, that's the Creek language because the Creeks founded Tulsa. And they walk away from there that night, even though it's a small, insignificant thing or whatever, but that person walks away there that night knowing something that they didn't know before, specifically about the intertwined roots of Tulsa and the Mvskoke Creek people.
Right. Yeah.
And I think, look at that, and it's a small win. It's a win. And so...
Well, I think it also adds value for that person, even if they're not a Native American, because like anybody who's not a Native American that goes to an area that has a reservation or anything like that, those little snippets of information, about their culture or whatever is a story that person can tell to somebody else, and then they look like they're smart. Like, hey, did you know Tulsa's actually Tulsi now?
That's a train conversation.
You know what I mean? Like, and it just spreads out from there. So
well, and think about it. When you bring up a great point, because when we think reservations, a lot of people, they think reservations in Arizona or you know what I mean, or North Dakota, South Dakota.
Right.
What we have here is a very specific, very unique established reservation, because if you go over the entire country, there's not one reservation like ours but one, the Puyallup in Washington. Because they have Tacoma inside of their reservation.
Yeah.
One of the largest cities in Washington. We have Tulsa inside of our reservation, the second largest city in Oklahoma, a major metropolis. So those reservations don't have this, especially when it comes to crime and punishment and the justice system and everything, because when you think about the fact that we're cutting out a piece of Tulsa and saying, here, you're on our table now to take care of all that entails a reservation, then it's pretty high cotton. And it's a lot. It's a big responsibility. And so people's mindset, they don't really think, because of things like Tulsa, they don't think that's the res, but it is the res now.
Right. Well, and I think
established 2020.
Yeah. Well,
you could say established before that.
Well, I think too, that's something that's only going to help the city's reputation nationally, globally. Are there any shout outs you want to give to your production staff? Because, we haven't talked about Anthony and everything that's going on in that area.
Well, Anthony's actually leaving. This is his last week. Yeah, but Anthony Nieto has done a fantastic job with me on the board, and basically just kind of being my co-host, and he does a lot of research, man. It's funny because like we'll be doing, he gets so mad at me because he's like, I spent 3 days typing up this paper with all this stuff, and he's like, you just rattle it off and I'm like, man, that just means I'm old and I've been here forever and I've covered this stuff forever, whatever. Yeah. But it's neat to see somebody with that like bright-eyed, that newborn baby that's like, uncovering a lot of these things.
Well, and that comes across in the pod too. Yeah. When he's sitting in, he's kind of like, "Hey, take me on a trip."
Yeah, exactly.
So
for sure,
you need that audience in the room guy.
Yeah, and he's been great. And before he left as well, Kyle Lee was on some of the basically creation of it with us, and it was sort of our idea together, the three of us, and we were like, this is going to be our little project, what I mean? And we did the pod cave, and we got all the equipment, and we were like, man, this is our a pet project here, and we're going to go full bore with it. But Kyle got a great opportunity, and so he's not here anymore, but I wanted to shout him out for sure. And then Ashton Taylor's been really helping us out, doing a good job, kind of stepping into that role of Anthony, sort of helping kind of like schedule and do the marketing of it and promote it and everything like that. So that's really helped me, because me, I if I'm left to all of that stuff, I'm going to miss something. You know what I mean? Like making a post about it or whatever.
Well, it's really professional too. Like I'm not trying. It's not backhanded compliment, but I'm just saying like the graphics that are with it are great. The logo is great.
Thanks.
Like there's nothing that's lacking on it, and so kudos on that front. Thank you. T.Y. Pearl says there's going to be a job opening.
Is there going to be a job opening? Well, hey, man, like I said, that position will come open, at the not communications, but Anthony was under marketing and tourism, so keep an eye out. The employment tab there on the nation's homepage, there's always jobs, and just find the one that's best for you. But if he's got some great credentials or whatever, come on, man. We always love to have the help.
You've been listening to Mvskoke Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.